The summer of 1967 was supposed to belong to bigger engines. Every showroom echoed with the same promise: more cubic inches, more horsepower, more noise. Chevrolet had its 327, Ford had the 390 and the 428. Chrysler was preparing monsters like the 440 Magnum and the legendary 426 HEMI. Bigger meant better, at least that's what everyone believed. But hidden beneath all that thunder was an engine almost nobody talks about today. An engine that wasn't built to dominate magazine covers or win drag race bragging rights. It was designed for something far more dangerous: surviving the real world. And what happened next should have changed everything. Most people have no idea that one of Plymouth's smartest V8s wasn't a fire-breathing big block at all. It was the humble 318 Commando, an engine that quietly proved you didn't need massive displacement to build a dependable performance machine. Yet somehow, history left it behind. So how did one of Chrysler's most balanced small-block V8s become one of the most forgotten? And why are mechanics still praising it nearly 60 years later? To understand the story, you have to go back to a time when America was obsessed with horsepower. By the mid-1960s, the muscle car war had exploded. Every manufacturer was chasing bigger numbers. Advertisements screamed about quarter-mile times. Dealerships filled their windows with horsepower ratings instead of fuel economy. Young buyers wanted speed, while racers wanted engines that could survive weekend abuse. Detroit had become a battlefield, and the ammunition was cubic inches. Pontiac had unleashed the GTO with its 389 tri-power, fundamentally creating the muscle car formula overnight. Oldsmobile countered with the 442. Buick brought the Grand Sport. Even AMC, the smallest of the American automakers, was developing the brutish 390 that would power the AMX and Javelin. Performance sold cars, and performance meant one thing: size. Plymouth already had powerful options. The monstrous 426 Street HEMI officially produced 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, although many engineers believed the real number was much higher. The 383 and 440 big blocks delivered effortless acceleration. These were headline engines. The 318 wasn't. Its roots stretch back to Chrysler's famous LA Series small block family, introduced in 1964. LA stood for Light A, replacing the older A engine with a lighter, thinner wall casting that reduced weight while maintaining strength. The development of the LA series represented a fundamental shift in Chrysler's engineering philosophy. The older A-series engines had served the company well throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, but they carried unnecessary weight. Engineers realized they could modernize the design, improve manufacturing efficiency, and create an engine family that could adapt to future demands. They started with the block itself. By using advanced casting techniques and carefully analyzing stress points, Chrysler's metallurgists discovered they could thin the cylinder walls without sacrificing durability. This wasn't reckless weight reduction. It was calculated engineering based on real-world testing and sophisticated analysis. The deck height was lowered. The valve train was redesigned. The oiling system was rethought from the ground up. What emerged was an engine that weighed significantly less than its predecessor while actually improving in several key areas. The numbers weren't flashy. A 3.9 1-inch bore, a 3.3 1-inch stroke, 318 cubic inches, or 5.2 liters. Depending on the year and configuration, compression ratios ranged from around 9.2, 1 to 10.5, one during the high compression years before emissions regulations began reducing them. Factory output for the Commando version typically reached around 230 gross horsepower, with roughly 340 pound-feet of torque thanks to a Carter 4-barrel carburetor, improved intake manifold, dual exhaust, and a hotter camshaft than standard 318 models. On paper, those numbers didn't scare anyone, but paper doesn't tell the whole story. The engineers inside Chrysler weren't trying to build another HEMI. They wanted something drivers could actually live with. Something that started every morning, idled smoothly in traffic, survived thousands of highway miles, and still surprised people when the throttle hit the floor. They understood something the marketing department didn't always appreciate. Real customers weren't drag racers. They were salesmen driving across the Midwest, families heading to vacation destinations, construction workers hauling tools and materials, people who needed their vehicles to work day after day without drama. That balance became the Commando's greatest weapon. But there was a problem. Nobody was paying attention. By 1968, Plymouth showrooms were packed with roadrunners wearing massive 383 inches badges and GTX models carrying intimidating 440s. Buyers walked right past the 318. Salesmen didn't help either. Bigger engines brought bigger commissions. The marketing materials told the story. Full-page magazine spreads featured smoking tires and aggressive hood scoops. Television commercials showed cartoon characters racing across the desert. Radio advertisements boasted about acceleration times. Nowhere in that promotional blitz was there room for an engine that simply worked well. The Commando became the quiet guy standing in the corner while everyone admired the heavyweight champion. Yet underneath the valve covers, Chrysler engineers had built something remarkably sophisticated. The LA block used wedge-shaped combustion chambers that promoted efficient burning. Hydraulic lifters kept maintenance simple. 5 massive main bearings supported the forged crankshaft. Oil passages were carefully routed through the block, maintaining consistent lubrication during sustained highway driving. Each bearing journal was generously sized, spreading loads across a larger surface area. The oil pump was positioned to provide optimal flow without excessive parasitic drag. The timing chain utilized a robust design that resisted stretching far longer than many competitors. Even small details mattered. The valve covers sealed reliably, the intake manifold bolted down with proper gasket surfaces. The exhaust manifolds, while not performance-oriented, rarely cracked under normal use. Mechanics quickly noticed something unusual. These engines simply refused to die. Former Chrysler technicians often joked that the body would rust away before the engine quit. One longtime dealership mechanic reportedly laughed. "We'd replace transmissions, water pumps, alternators, even entire interiors, but we'd almost never have to open the bottom end." Another veteran technician from a busy Plymouth dealership in Michigan told stories about taxi cabs that accumulated staggering mileage. "We had drivers bringing in Furies with over 200,000 miles. They'd need suspension work, brake jobs, seat repairs. The 318S, maybe a timing chain and valve cover gaskets. That was it. That wasn't luck. It was engineering." The relatively short 3.31-inch stroke reduced average piston speed compared to longer stroke competitors. Lower piston speed meant less stress on connecting rods, bearings, and cylinder walls. Even when pushed hard, the rotating assembly stayed remarkably stable. At 5,500 revolutions per minute, many contemporary engines were already approaching their comfort limit. The 318 still felt composed. Engineers had calculated the stress loading at various RPM ranges and designed components with appropriate safety margins. The connecting rods weren't the lightest possible. They were strong enough to handle sustained high-speed operation. The pistons weren't exotic forgings in base form. They were reliable cast pieces that expanded predictably and sealed consistently. Most people don't realize how important that was. While magazines focused on quarter-mile glory, ordinary Americans were driving across deserts, climbing mountains, towing trailers, and commuting every day. Reliability wasn't exciting until it disappeared. And then the real challenge arrived. The late 1960s brought increasingly competitive racing, tighter emission standards, and changing customer expectations. Although the 318 Commando wasn't developed specifically as a NASCAR powerhouse, its architecture shared much with Chrysler's increasingly successful small-block racing program. Lessons learned from endurance competition filtered back into production engines. Engineers understood heat was the enemy. Cooling passages surrounded each cylinder evenly. The water jackets were designed so coolant flowed where temperatures climbed highest. Unlike some competing designs that suffered hot spots, the 318's cooling system moved fluid predictably and effectively. Oil pressure remained stable under extended load. Valve train geometry minimized wear. The rocker arms operated at angles that reduced side loading on valve stems. Pushrod length was carefully calculated. Lifter bore alignment was held to tight tolerances during manufacturing. Instead of chasing maximum horsepower, Chrysler focused on making every component survive longer. It worked. Fleet operators began noticing extraordinary longevity. Taxi companies, police departments, and commercial users discovered the 318 could routinely exceed 150,000 miles when properly maintained, a remarkable figure during an era when many engines required major work, well before that milestone. One fleet manager reportedly told a trade publication, "Fuel pumps come and go, starters wear out, the engines just keep running." Police departments across the country quietly adopted the 318 for patrol vehicles that didn't require pursuit capabilities. Chiefs appreciated the lower acquisition cost compared to big block cars and the reduced maintenance expenses over the vehicle's service life. Officers appreciated engines that started reliably during cold winter nights and operated smoothly during long highway patrols. In commercial applications, the story repeated itself. Delivery vans equipped with 318S accumulated hundreds of thousands of stop-and-go miles. Utility company trucks idled for hours while technicians worked on power lines. Plumbing contractors loaded vehicles with heavy equipment and drove them across rough job sites. The engines endured. You can probably guess what happened next. Instead of celebrating durability, America demanded more horsepower. The arrival of engines like Plymouth's own 340 changed everything. Introduced for 1968, the high-performance 340 produced 275 gross horsepower officially, although many enthusiasts believed actual output exceeded 300. It featured larger valves, aggressive cam timing, a high-rise intake manifold, and 10.5 compression. The 340 represented everything the muscle car market craved. It revved willingly to 6,000 revolutions per minute. It barked through dual exhausts. It embarrassed bigger engines at stoplights. Magazine testers praised its performance, and street racers quickly discovered it offered one of the best power-to-weight ratios in the industry. Suddenly, the Commando looked ordinary again. Then came the legendary 360 in 1971. The 360 shared the LA architecture but stretched bore and stroke to create more displacement. It became Chrysler's workhorse engine for trucks and larger passenger cars, eventually replacing the 318 in many performance applications. Even within Chrysler's own lineup, the dependable 318 became overshadowed. But here's the irony. When emissions regulations tightened after the 1970 Clean Air Act, many high-compression performance engines struggled. Compression ratios dropped dramatically. Horsepower numbers fell almost overnight. Insurance premiums skyrocketed. Fuel prices climbed. The muscle car era entered its decline. The 1973 oil embargo accelerated the transformation. Suddenly, gas-guzzling performance engines became liabilities rather than assets. Buyers who once demanded 440 cubic inches now wanted reliability and reasonable fuel consumption. The giant V8s that had dominated headlines suddenly became expensive luxuries. The modest 318, it adapted. Compression ratios fell into the low 80s. Carburation changed. Ignition systems improved. Engineers tuned for cleaner combustion rather than maximum output. Horsepower dropped significantly, sometimes below 170 net horsepower depending on the model year. Yet owners kept driving them. Why? Because reliability never disappeared. The thick cylinder walls tolerated countless rebuilds. The cast iron block resisted cracking. The crankshaft rarely failed. Timing chains lasted longer than many competitors. Even the cooling systems proved surprisingly forgiving. Mechanics across North America developed enormous respect for the engine. One independent shop owner famously joked, "If somebody says their 318 blew up, ask what they forgot to put in it. Oil? Coolant? Pistons?" The joke carried truth. Most 318 failures resulted from neglect rather than design flaws. An owner who ignored oil changes, ran the engine without coolant, or operated with a failing oil pump might eventually damage even this durable engine. But given basic maintenance, catastrophic failures remained rare. Of course, no engine is perfect. The 318 had weaknesses. Valve stem seals could wear, leading to oil consumption. Timing chains stretched after high mileage. Carburetors required periodic adjustment. Exhaust manifolds occasionally cracked after decades of heat cycling. Early versions sometimes suffered from distributor shaft wear, causing ignition timing to wander. The factory camshaft, while durable, was quite mild by performance standards, and the two-barrel carburetor versions equipped on most standard 318S were optimized for economy rather than power. But catastrophic bottom-end failures? Those were remarkably uncommon. That reputation spread far beyond Plymouth. The engine found its way into Dodge Darts, Plymouth Furies, Dodge Ram pickups, vans, police cruisers, and commercial vehicles. Millions rolled off Chrysler assembly lines over the years, making the 318 one of the company's longest-running V8 designs. Production continued in various forms for decades. Think about that. While glamorous muscle car engines disappeared after only a few years, the supposedly boring 318 just kept working. And that's exactly why enthusiasts underestimated it. Then something unexpected happened. Hot rodders began looking at the old small block differently. Because the foundation was so strong, aftermarket builders realized the engine responded surprisingly well to modifications. Install aluminum heads, upgrade the camshaft, replace the intake with a modern dual-plane manifold, add a 4-barrel carburetor or electronic fuel injection, improve exhaust flow. Suddenly, 300 horsepower became realistic without sacrificing street manners. Push the combination further with higher compression, forged internals, and better cylinder heads, and 400 naturally aspirated horsepower wasn't impossible. Modern engine management systems transformed the 318's potential. By precisely controlling fuel delivery and ignition timing, builders could safely run higher compression ratios even on pump gasoline. The addition of aftermarket aluminum cylinder heads from companies specializing in Mopar small blocks dramatically improved airflow while reducing engine weight. Turbocharged builds eventually crossed well beyond that. Not bad for the forgotten engine everyone ignored. Its relatively compact size also made engine swaps easier than Chrysler's massive RB big block family. Racers appreciated the lighter front-end weight, improving balance and handling. Some builders even argued that a properly prepared 318 created a more enjoyable street car than heavier big block combinations. Less nose weight, better fuel economy, lower maintenance, nearly the same driving enjoyment. The handling difference was particularly noticeable in A-body cars like Dusters and Darts. A big block car felt nose-heavy, pushing wide in corners and requiring more effort to steer. A well-built small block car felt balanced and responsive, rewarding drivers who appreciated more than straight-line acceleration. But history had already made its choice. Ask someone to name famous Mopar engines, and they'll probably mention the 426 HEMI first, then the 446 pack, maybe the 346 barrel, occasionally the 383 Magnum. The 318 rarely enters the conversation. That's unfortunate, because engineering isn't always about building the most powerful machine. Sometimes it's about building the smartest one. There's another reason collectors overlooked it. Exclusivity drives value. Only a limited number of HEMI cars were built, making them million-dollar collectibles today. High-performance 446-pack cars command enormous prices. Rare AAR Cudas and 6-barrel Challengers dominate auction headlines. The 318 was everywhere. Millions existed. It wasn't rare. It wasn't glamorous. It simply worked. Ironically, that success became its greatest weakness in the history books. Nobody writes legends about the engine that quietly starts every morning, yet perhaps they should. Because countless families crossed America behind a 318. Farmers hauled equipment, police officers patrolled highways, contractors built businesses, teenagers learned to wrench on them. Fathers taught sons and daughters how to set ignition timing using these engines. The 318 didn't just power cars, it powered lives. It was the engine under the hood when a young couple drove away from their wedding. It transported families to new homes in different states. It helped small business owners earn their livelihoods. It taught countless teenagers about automotive repair, providing a forgiving platform that tolerated learning mistakes. Today, surviving examples continue proving the point. Enthusiasts regularly report original engines exceeding 250,000 or even 300,000 miles, with proper maintenance. Parts remain widely available. Rebuild costs stay reasonable compared to many exotic V8s, and thanks to decades of aftermarket support, nearly every component can still be upgraded. The aftermarket's continued support speaks volumes. Companies still manufacture performance parts specifically for the 318 because demand remains steady. That's extraordinary for an engine some consider obsolete. You can still order pistons, camshafts, cylinder heads, intake manifolds, and complete rotating assemblies. That's an extraordinary legacy, especially for an engine history almost forgot. Listen carefully at a classic car show, and you'll hear people crowd around the HEMIs, but walk a little farther. You'll find an older owner leaning against a dusty Plymouth with a smile on his face. Ask him why he kept the original 318. The answer usually isn't about horsepower, it's about trust. He knows that if he turns the key tomorrow morning, it'll probably fire right up. That's something no dyno sheet can measure. The Plymouth 318 Commando never rewrote the horsepower record books. It never humiliated rivals at Daytona. It never became the face of the muscle car era. But it quietly accomplished something many famous engines never did. It earned decades of unwavering loyalty by doing exactly what it was designed to do: run, survive, and keep running. In the end, the forgotten Fury wasn't forgotten because it failed. It was forgotten because it was overshadowed by louder legends. Yet its greatest achievement wasn't making the most power. It was proving that smart engineering and relentless durability could outlast almost anything. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments which forgotten engine deserves its own deep dive next. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the greatest automotive legends aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones history almost left behind.